Thanks for joining us, everybody. We're here today with Dan Colarusso, Executive Editor of Reuters Digital. Of course, we're with Jim Anderson, CEO of Social Flow, and we're talking about Trump, Trump's tweets, and also the op-ed piece that you wrote for the New York Observer, which seems to be getting a lot of press in itself. So let's talk about that.
Yeah, the key point, I think, is governing is very different than campaigning. And the president-elect period that we're just now finishing up is this awkward transition between the two. And the whole premise is that governing in the age of Twitter is going to be very different than campaigning in the age of Twitter. And so it doesn't seem like President Trump's Twitter behavior is going to change. What's going to be interesting is to see how the reaction changes and what kind of popularity or not that he gets from that.
Dan, you're in charge of a group of journalists that cover this stuff. So how is it different for you?
Well, I think it's different because you have to evaluate his activity on Twitter now in a way you didn't have to during the campaign, right? Now, is it policy? Is it vitriol? Or is it, preaching to the choir, getting to his base because he knows they're already there? You have a different set of criteria when you start to evaluate this stuff. So it makes it kind of interesting. And we talked about it, we have history here. Just for disclosure's sake, Reuters has a vendor relationship with Social Flow, and Mark and I, you and I know each other from morning TV together.
Right.
And we saw it very dramatically back in 2009, 2010, 2011, when social media came to the fore, and it kind of became like our assignment editor. It went from being, as you would say, a sideshow to setting an agenda. Now, which tweets set the agenda? Well, if it were Obama coming out and saying something every day, it would set an agenda. It may be very similar with Trump. I mean, we don't know. We're going into uncharted territory. No president has ever had this kind of direct contact with the American populace.
Now, one of the things I'd love to get your take on, Dan, given that you're a professional journalist, is it seems like that he gets directly to his base, like you said. He's got 18, 20 million Twitter followers. That's great. But that's not where his power comes from. His power comes from all the media coverage he attracts of what he says to his base.
The particle accelerator of a provocative tweet, right?
Which you guys do as much as anybody else, right? I mean, you help. Like he sends out a tweet, and it might seem like, to some people like a loony tweet because it's 3 a.m. and it's just him lambasting Alec Baldwin. But then everybody covers it, and that makes it a big deal. In fairness,
we don't cover that like that, but it does get a lot of mainstream press, and it does get a lot of retweet action from our business because people are interested and they should know. All of a sudden, the president's behavior, whether it's on Twitter or in real life, is news now, right? So is it a behavioral issue?
Right.
And the balance and the intellectual and the philosophical approaches is really kind of fascinating.
Right, I don't mean to say that you guys cover every single tweet, but like a tweet about Ford or moving jobs overseas, whatever it is, like that's something you can't.
Well, you can't ignore that, but you ignore him attacking John Lewis.
Right.
Right. That's a judgment call. Do you cover him attacking Meryl Streep? That's a judgment call. So there are all these news. We never had to make these judgments before because we've never had that happen. And it's interesting you talk about campaigns. Like, is this a way for him to stay in campaign mode, which he's very, very good at? Mm-hmm. While everyone else does the work of governing, which is, if that's the approach, that's fine. I'm not criticizing it or complimenting it. But is this a way for him to stay in campaign mode and keep momentum going? If Obama had engaged the populace like this on ACA, would we be in a very different situation? And that honesty that Trump is able to do because he doesn't have the trappings of a traditional politician helps in this medium.
The other thing is, will he use it? He's often good at, if there's something serious going on, and maybe it's something that his administration is working on or whatever, or something that they're handling well, obviously. But he does things sometimes to take it's like, look at this sideshow over here. He just attacked, let's say, John Lewis, and suddenly the whole news media shifts onto that story, and that's something he's good at as well. So it's like you sort of have to you kind of have to follow what he's doing here, but then also follow what everyone else is doing for him over here. It's almost like there are two different. There are several shows going on at once.
Right, exactly. It's a 3-ring circus, right? And one ring is very, very squarely in here. I think you probably addressed that, right, in your piece about that campaign ideology. And then when you get down to, we don't know how it'll work. Will it infuriate China? Will in mainland China, let's say, where Twitter might be cut off, people using VPNs and now tapping into what Trump is saying, what does that make them think of what's really going on and what story are they getting at home from state media?
Right.
That's an issue. It's a fascinating time for our businesses.
Well, one thing we just did yesterday was we did a big data kind of mining exercise to see how much. We all know that he was covered a lot. I mean, you know that better than anyone when he was in Canada. But how is he performing on social media now that he's president-elect? And we saw, I mean, the patterns were sort of similar, but one thing we did see was engagement per post were down 6%. This is on Facebook, I believe, only, right? We're measuring Facebook. Mm-hmm. And also reach per post down 9%. So you have to wonder, I mean, I wondered aloud, would people become desensitized to him because he says outrageous stuff, and then you're kind of used to it, and it's like watching an NFL game when there's someone who does like a crazy end zone. What's it? End zone dance. Yeah. Then you become anesthetized to it.
We have to build a wall and keep these people who don't know football out of America.
I mean, well, I should do know a little bit. So the idea was you could become desensitized to it, but then I wondered that once he got the designation president-elect and when he becomes president, do you then have to pay all the people that stop paying attention because they're no longer offended or bewildered or surprised
or motivated
or just entertained? Yeah. Are they now going to have to pay more attention because he has a lot of might behind him? And I don't know. These numbers sort of suggest that at least for the time being that people are a little, it's like, how did you phrase it before? You said it's like something about a bowl game, like you had a bowl game, and that.
I said it's like Trump's. If these numbers are on the money, it's like you're a Yankee fan. They've won the World Series. Now you just go home and go back to the rest of your life for the next 6 months until spring training starts. And I think that could be part of it. But I also think that the people. A very interesting, like demographic thing. People who care about his tweets now are a very different group of people who had to care about his tweets during the campaign.
Right.
During the campaign, you were looking for your champion and you wanted to follow him into battle. Now we're looking at him as news, and opponents are looking at him to find the slip up, and it's that kind of scrutiny that the troops don't have to follow him anymore because now he's the president. So they live and die less on it. Yeah. I think.
Well, that ties into an interesting thing I was looking at in preparing the sort of Trump in the age of governance rather than campaigning. You've seen even now some people, some of Trump's supporters, even Trump himself, criticizing Hillary. Right? Well, Hillary's not running for anything anymore. At least if the rumors are not true. Yeah, exactly. But I mean, trying to vilify Hillary, I mean, how long can you do that when you've won the election? You're taking office of the most powerful, office arguably in the world. You've got control of the military. The party you're affiliated with has control of both houses of Congress.
And you get Supreme Court, next 3 Supreme Court judges.
So at some point, trying to make Hillary the villain. I mean, how is that going to play, and how long is that going to play before people are like you said, the Yankees, you've won. I mean, you don't just keep beating the same team again and again.
Well, you don't know. I mean, we hit a divide in this country where Hillary is now the symbol or the face for Trump supporters to vilify the liberal coastal elites. And does Hillary just exist as that punching bag throughout his whole administration? Right. That could be part of it. The other part of it is dance with the girl who brung you. I mean, he bashing Hillary didn't hurt Trump at all in the campaign, right. And it gives him something to go back to just keep people a little poked and riled up. So I think it's interesting. What I find interesting is the effect he's had on corporate America. Mm-hmm. What I'm calling bully capitalism.
Right.
Like he comes out and he tweets something, and Hyundai from South Korea says, "Oh, we're going to throw another $3 billion. We broke that story. Hyundai's going to throw another $3 billion into U.S. plants." People are actually acting or pretending that they're adding jobs or republicizing what they're doing just to keep the heat off there,
right.
Because it affects their stock price. It affects how people might buy their products. You don't know what effect it's going to have. I mean, I tend to think it may not have as much, but
at least in the beginning, it's going to.
Right.
I mean, Al Levine must be thrilled.
Right. Oh, but would you say maybe this is a new way of governing? Maybe this is where the policy gets rolled out. This is the way the trial balloons go up.
Right. Well, if you think about it, as you do every day, historically the media has been the filter, right? The president or a candidate says something. Yeah. If it's judged suitably interesting and relevant, it's reported on by the media. Well, this is the other way around. He says it directly, and then the public consumes it, shares it, et cetera. Right. And then if it's judged suitably interesting, it's covered by the media. So it's a bit backwards from what it used to be. Yep.
Absolutely. It's a real shift in the power bases of the information age, right? Of the information economy, of the information whatever.
So without putting you on the spot, but I sort of am, since these conversations...
Thanks for that. I appreciate it.
Conversations are happening in the mornings or afternoons wherever they happen. Like, so what do you do? Do you sit down and you go through a bunch of tweets and you say, all right, this one was spur of the moment. This one, he's just, had a rough day. This one, this could affect people. Like, are you kind of going through them almost tweet by tweet?
I think you look at it. I think I'll speak to the larger media, and I think how we'll start to look at it, so I could avoid the spot you're putting on me.
It's so secretive.
Well, it is. There is some intellectual property to how we think about things, but I think you look at a few things. You look at the impact it could have on policy, the reaction it could get from its target,
right.
The reaction it could get from the people, and whether it's just like blowing off steam. Right? So John Lewis became important because it was around or on Martin Luther King Day. It seemed tremendously aggressive and got a lot of reaction. Of course, it doesn't hurt, but it just gets a lot of reaction from people who are natural opponents. Meryl Streep, not so much. People get upset, they make fun of Hollywood, blah, 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 they go back to their thing. But on the side of Ford or GM, it really does kind of set a policy. On China, it sets a policy. So I think that's how you evaluate. You wake up in the morning. We have this thing where we do a 7 o'clock conference call every morning, Roy, to 7 a.m. U.S. time, where we're talking about things across the world. And in the middle of that now, these Trump tweets are coming out. So like I'll be talking to one of my producers on Slack, and I'll hit them and I say, hey, did you get on that Trump thing? And they're like, which Trump thing? And depending on what point in the morning you're at, it could be any number of Trump things, right? So is it the reaction? Is it the Russians? So it is a really kind of constantly shifting thing, and it does force you to pay attention a lot earlier in the morning than even you and I are used to.
I don't know. We were up fairly early.